Oh, that's appropriate. One magpie has just landed on my balcony. And that's appropriate because something very frustrating has just happened. I was about 20 minutes into filming this video and my camera battery flashed up saying it needed changing. So I changed my battery, as I always do, and a little error message popped up and I ignored it. But when I clicked on the footage, everything that I'd just filmed had gone. So I guess we're starting this video again. To be honest, I did waffle quite a lot the first time around, so maybe it's a blessing in disguise, but it's just a little bit annoying. So hello everyone, again. I hope you're doing well today. I am doing just fine. These are actually my favourite kind of videos to make on my channel, so I'm not that upset that I have to start from the top, because I feel like with my annual videos, my opinion changes so much throughout the year that I come into them from a very different approach every single time I make them. And oh my goodness, I feel so differently about the plants I'm going to talk to you about today as opposed to the ones that I did this time last year. And I've also had the chance to chat to quite a lot of you guys in the plant community as well. So yeah, I think it's gonna be a fun planty chat, which is obviously something we never do over here on my channel. But I'll put lots of pictures on the screen. We can look at some interesting things and yeah, just have a chit chat about where we think plant trends might be going this year. But first, if you're new here, hi, my name's Claire and this is Yoli. I make videos all about houseplant care, sharing tips and tricks I've learnt over the years to help keep your plants happy and healthy. And yeah, I'm sat down here next to my very waffly list, but as I say, I've had a practice round. I'm hoping I can be a little bit more concise as we chat through things. And please do let me know down in the comments below what some of your predictions are. Do they match mine? Have you got completely different things in your mind? I would love to know. But yes, I hope you enjoy it. Let's get into it. So the first thing that I've written down is more of just like an overriding feeling of what I think this year could be. And I've put year of, oh my God, everything's happening today. I think we just had a mini power cut. Year of refining / downsizing. And I don't think this is necessarily specific to plants, but it is just something that I'm seeing people do a lot on social media in their homes at the moment. I think under consumption core is starting to trend quite a bit. I think because as humans in the social media world that we very much live in, it's very easy to be influenced by things and to see things online and go, oh my goodness, I must have it. And oh, it's just a click away, and end up with a load of stuff that we don't need. And I don't know about you guys, but I am, when it comes to plants, I am so easily influenced. I'll see this thing on social media, I'll add it to my wish list, and quite often within the space of a month or two, I will have it in my collection. So I do think it is a good thing. Personally, I don't have any big plans to massively downsize my own collection this year, but I know there are a lot of other creators that are kind of talking about the fact that they're doing it and kind of showing how they're getting rid of plants. I personally feel pretty happy with my collection at the moment. I think I'm at about maximum capacity for me and what I feel I can personally take on at the moment. If I was to get a ton more plants, I probably would think about some that I could get rid of, but I think just maintaining a level that feels manageable and fun is key. The thing that I do like about the kind of downsizing and refining trend is the fact that I think people will be able to pay a lot more attention to the plants that they've actually got, because I think at the beginning of last year did do a little bit of a clear out of my own collection, and I got rid of everything that wasn't bringing me like an insane amount of joy and excitement. I found it new homes, I did some swaps and some trades, and I found that really, really beneficial for me because I felt excited by plants that I hadn't felt excited by in a while. Things that I had been maybe a little bit overlooking here or there. I started thinking about ways in which I could bring out the best in them, and that was a really lovely thing to experience and something that I have very much carried through the rest of the year with me, and I hope to just be more aware of as I continue with plants, because it's horrible when you've got plants that you're like, oh yeah, I'll do something with it at some point, and it just sits in a pot, not reaching its full potential for years and years and years, and it's almost like, why don't you come back to that plant when you've got a bit more time, and in the meantime, let someone else play with it. That's my thoughts on it. But yeah, as I say, I am fully in support of those who are choosing to have a bit of a downsize or a declutter of their plant collection. But also, I don't think you should have to just because it's trending. And I think I will probably say that as we go through this video. Just because something is trendy, I know it is so easy to be sucked in by things on social media. Like what you like, dig what you dig, and don't feel the need to be influenced just because people are showing that they're doing it. But yeah, definitely pro underconsumption as opposed to overconsumption for me. But the next thing I've put on my list, and this is another just general one, and then we will get onto some actual plants, I promise. But I've just put easy plants ? And back to basics. I think we've had a year of lots of new things being thrown in our faces. We've had a ton of things which I'm not saying these trends are just done. In fact, I have got some on the list, but because there's been so much that's been popping up and so many things that have been more accessible, like lots of anthuriums have become more accessible and all sorts, I think a lot of what might come next might be people going, you know what, I really just want to go out and get a good old pothos plant or a Monstera deliciosa or something that is more kind of like, I don't know, a classic staple house plant. I think they're popular plants for a reason, and I think I think about all of the plants in my collection, and I said it in fact in my top 10 of the year video, things like Monstera, Epipremnum, certain types of Hoya, these are things that, although maybe they're not as trendy and they've kind of been about for forever when we talk about houseplants, they're ones that I can't imagine not having my collection without. So if maybe there are people that have kind of really heavily got into houseplants in the last couple of years, maybe through the social media influence, they've probably seen lots of like really cool anthuriums and really like awesome aglaonema and stuff like that, and they might have hopped in and got those as their first plants. I think a lot of people now are probably going to go, you know what, we need a bit more of the classics. So yeah, that is a thought in general for this year. But then on to the list of plants. I'm gonna pull some pictures up here, so I'll squidge over. And in fact, I will screen record what I'm seeing on my phone so we can look at some things together. But the first thing that I put on the list was weird Sansevieria. And I think Sansevieria, kind of what I was saying before, Sansevieria is, or Dracaena, now Dracaena, I know it's been reclassified, I still call it Sansevieria. But I know snake plants have been kind of like your staple house plants, the ones that are just kind of there and people don't really think too much about and don't really care too much about. But there are so many gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous types of Sansevieria that are really hardy, really easy to care for, that I just think are gonna make a little bit of a comeback this year. For example, this one here, the Sansevieria Moonshine. Oh my goodness. This is such a beautiful one. I've got one in my collection over by the sink at the moment, and it's just so gorgeous. It's a beautiful kind of silvery blue colour. It's one that requires literally no care. Like, I throw some water on that plant maybe once a month in the spot that it's in, and I let it dry out. It's also quite easy to propagate, and I just look at that and I'm like, I feel like, particularly for people, as I say, talking about like underconsumption core, particularly for people that are maybe wanting to keep their home really, really, really green, but get rid of some higher maintenance plants, maybe they'll get more Sansevieria. Looking at this one here as well, I don't know what this is, but oh my goodness, Sansevieria Royal Crown White. Isn't that just stunning? That is absolutely stunning. I've seen some gorgeous Sansevierias being grown in like head planters, and like ones like this almost look like Mohicans. Someone in fact on my Patreon did a tour of their plants a while ago, and I looked at that and I was like, that looks so cool. I'm just waiting for Ross to make like a cool head planter or something to put that in. But yeah, just like look at that. There are so many, and these aren't even the ones necessarily that I was thinking of, but there are so many beautiful, beautiful varieties of Sansevieria that really don't get enough credit, in my opinion. I think also because they are ones that can survive and still grow in lower levels of light. A lot of the time people just kind of get them as like space fillers. They'll shove them in a corner. And in fact, you know what? I'm guilty of this. I've got my Sansevieria tower over there in the corner, and those are all plants that don't get a lot of care and they remain looking lovely. But just because they can grow like that, if you put them in higher light, which in fact, this one here, can't remember the exact ID on this one actually, but I got this one at the beginning of last year. They can grow beautifully, and this one is growing so well for me. It was quite a little thing when I first got it, and I do just think it's such a beautiful, beautiful type of Sansevieria. And there's lots that I would be intrigued to do a little bit more digging on myself and potentially add to my collection at some point. I had the Moonshine on my list. I also had the Hahanii, which I saw pop up recently. I think I saw the diamond variegated Hahanii. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. And yeah, I thought it was absolutely stunning. The Metallica as well is another silvery blue one that I just think is absolutely amazing. Again, I've got it over there in the corner. It's a really hardy one. I am yet to encounter a Sansevieria that can't take a little bit of neglect and long periods without water and be very adaptable lighting wise. Obviously ones like the Metallica that do have a higher balance of white on them are going to appreciate more light because they don't contain as much chlorophyll. But I just think again, it's a lovely one. And another one that I have seen pop up a lot on social media recently is the Sansevieria Copper Tone. And this one is a lot more weird. Like this is a really like bizarre Sansevieria. And it's one that personally I probably wouldn't choose for myself, but I know it is becoming quite trendy. I've also seen it in places like Grow Tropicals recently, and I know it is quite a popular houseplant at the moment. So I also do just think people are kind of leaning towards weirder plants more. Like I'm finding that as a content creator in the plant world, the videos that I put out on weirder plants are starting to do a little bit better, and like people are asking more questions about certain types of weird and wonderful plants. So I do see this one doing quite well this year. There are other types of Sansevieria as well, and as I say, I will put pictures on the screen so that you can see, but those are the main ones that for me, I was like, I think, not that the other ones won't be popular, but I think those ones could really trend. And the next note I've put on my list, and this is such a generalization, but I've just put philodendrons out. And I don't mean that philodendrons aren't gonna be like, I think people are still going to buy philodendrons this year, and I know for a fact I've got several on my list that I would like to get. But I think just as a general consensus, people aren't buying as many philodendrons as they used to. And I think partly that's probably because we kind of over-exhausted the buzz. Like everyone a couple of years ago was philodendron crazy. And like, I remember going to plant swaps and everyone was like, have you got any philodendrons? Have you got any philodendrons? They were just looking to raid your box and see what kind of philodendrons you brought. And now, in fact, I said this after the last plant swap video that I made, the last plant swap that I went to, it was all about anthuriums, and I brought some philodendrons. Like, for example, I brought several cuttings of the Genevivianum, which is this one here, which I thought would be quite popular. It's very ruffly, it's a really lovely philodendron, and I was like, you don't see it about much. I really thought people would kind of not necessarily go crazy over it, but I thought they'd quite like it. And yeah, by the end of the day, I was putting sections of it on the free table because everyone was just interested in like anthuriums and begonias and all these things that I was like, I wouldn't have expected it to shift so much so quickly. I think as well, obviously philodendrons typically are grown like on moss poles as upright climbing plants, and they do take up quite a lot of space. I know I've said myself, I really have to limit the number of crawlers I've got in my collection, like crawling plants that require trough planters. And I think it's probably getting to be the same. Like people bought philodendrons a couple of years ago, and those philodendrons have grown and they've got bigger and they've got bigger and they've got bigger moss poles. And for that reason, I mean, maybe not even just philodendrons, just climbing plants in general, I think we will probably see a bit of a decrease in. I was going to say, I just want to reiterate as well, this isn't that I don't love philodendrons or I'm not going to continue to buy them, because I really do. I'm just talking about like the trends, you know, the things that are happening on social media and the things that I kind of predict happening as the year goes on. and I just touched on it as well, but velvet leaf anthuriums, not even specifically velvet leaf anthuriums, although I do think they are like very much having a moment right now. But obviously at the beginning of last year, there were things like the Delta Force, and like I still very much think that that is going to be a popular plant this year. But there are so many other amazing plants that have gone into tissue culture. There are so many gorgeous hybrids appearing. If I just go on Instagram and I type in anthurium, like there are, oh my God, what is this? This is a Papillonominum cross 1, so some sort of pappy hybrid, and I've put that on the list. Papillonominums do make the most gorgeous, gorgeous hybrid anthuriums. This one, I would say, is maybe like a red spider cross or something. It is so pretty and it almost looks iridescent. I've also seen a lot of really gorgeous like Warocquianum hybrids popping up as well. The Waterburyanum Warocquianum is very popular at the moment, and I think particularly for people like me that struggle with plants, purebred plants such as the Warocquianum, finding hybrids is probably going to be like an easier option and something that kind of makes that plant a little bit more accessible to a lot of people growing wise without having to, I guess, lose plants. Because like, for example, the Warocquianum and the Regal, the Anthurium Regal, is one that is so beautiful, but I have struggled so much with over the years. And I got a Regal Magnificum, oh, was it last year or the year before? I actually can't remember. But I have found it so much easier to grow than just the standard Regal. And I've said it before, but often when you've got two plant species that are hybridized, it will create a much stronger, because it's got gene pools from both sides, it will create a much stronger plant that is much hardier, much more resilient to pests, disease, you name it. So I think anthurium hybrids for many reasons are going to trend this year. I think as well because people are playing about more at home with things like pollination. Oh my God, what's going on? We're having power cuts galore. I almost feel like maybe it's going to thunder. But yeah, people are playing about a lot more with pollination themselves at home and creating hybrids. And I know I have spoken a lot about the fact that that's something I'm keen to do. You don't have to be an expert in order to do it and in order to have a go. The process of it, in fact, is actually quite simple. So yeah, it's no wonder we're seeing a lot more of that. But just touching on the Delta Force for a moment, because I know me and Emma actually spoke about this in the video that we made on her channel recently, but a lot of places recently have been selling the Delta Force, and actually it is still a plant that is quite difficult to get hold of if you want a true Delta Force. I think a lot of people have a misunderstanding about what the Delta Force actually is, and this actually applies to a lot of tissue culture plants. And in fact, this is something that for me, I've only really learnt more about in the last year. I would have felt very differently this time last year about it because I just wasn't very educated in the area. But basically, when you get two parent plants and they make a really cool hybrid like the Delta Force, for example, you can't just cross those two plants again and expect to get a Delta Force. For example, I think the Anthurium Delta Force is a Clarinervium pedatatorium or something like that hybrid. And should you cross them again, you won't make a Delta Force. You will never make a Delta Force again because the Delta Force is that specific hybrid. And the only way you can get a Delta Force is if you take that exact plant and you put it into tissue culture and you clone it, and then the babies that you get through the process of tissue culture will then be Delta Force. And that is why the Delta Force is still so expensive to buy. Like, there's lots of people thinking that they've got one and, oh, I got mine for 70 quid. And it's like, no, you just got a hybrid. Again, not that that matters to everyone, but I just think it's important to kind of know that before you are potentially spending a lot of money on something that might not be the real deal. But yeah, I think there's a lot of other really cool hybrids in tissue culture at the moment that we are going to be seeing much more of this year. And variegated anthuriums as well. This is one that personally I'm not a massive fan of, but I know is something that is very, very popular at the moment. Like, don't get me wrong, I love variegation. I don't need variegation, but I do really like variegation on some plants. And if I could be very selective about my variegation with anthuriums, then I might be interested in, like, for example, some that had half moon variegation. But the problem that I have, and this is totally my opinion, totally personal, but I just think they look like they've got mosaic disease. They look like they are a leaf getting ready to die off. Like, often when I see velvet leaf anthuriums with a fungal disease or something like that, I kind of nowadays have to double take, and I'm like, is that fungal or is that variegation? To me, I don't find it attractive, and like, I know there's plenty of people that do, and that's totally fine. It is trending for a reason. But they are just these very desirable, sought after plants that people are sticking insane price tags on. And I'm just like, I don't know, like, if you like it, fantastic. If you like it and you can afford it, then get it. But personally, I wouldn't pay money for a variegated anthurium, or at least one that looks like a lot of the ones that I've seen, just because I'm like, it isn't appealing to me. I like my plants to look luscious and healthy, and to me that just screams disease. God, I went way too into that, but as I say, that is just something that I personally feel with variegated anthuriums. The other thing that has been trending a lot recently is obviously variegated alocasia, and this is something that to a certain extent I can get more on board with. There are some variegated alocasias, like the variegated alocasia Friedeck, which I absolutely love. Again, I typically do tend to prefer block variegation as opposed to like marbled variegation or mottled variegation. That is, again, just something for me that I prefer, because I think it looks healthier and it looks more intentional. That's not to say that, like, I don't from time to time enjoy a little bit of mottled. Like, occasionally my Friedeck will push out a leaf that's got a balance of both, and I'm like, oh, it's lovely. But yeah, I am starting to see many more variegated alocasias, I think because, again, they've gone into tissue culture and they're just becoming much more accessible. They still do have a pretty hefty price tag attached to them typically, but like, for example, I know the, whatchamacallit, black velvet alocasia, the one with the pink variegation, that really took a drop in price and more hit the market towards the end of last year. And I know loads of people that have got them now, and I think that that is a plant that not only will drop in price a lot as the year goes on, but I think it might even become one that, I don't know, you can go out and find in a garden centre. Maybe not this year, maybe that's a bit soon, but I do just think that, like, I don't know, the black velvet, in my experience, puts out corms fairly regularly. I'm not quite sure how stable the variegation is, but if people are propagating from corms more and more, then we're just going to start seeing that plant about more, which is fun. So yeah, I predict that one will just become more accessible. And then the variegated monstera. So, the variegated monstera albo, I think we are going to see a massive decline in the low variegation monstera albos, just because people have now been chopping and propagating with a conscious awareness of the fact that variegation sells. They can put a much bigger price tag on something that is more highly variegated. So I think probably we're going to be able to get low variegated monsteras for probably around about the same price as you can get just a standard Monstera deliciosa. So if that's what you're looking for, fantastic. I really do think that that is going to be much more of a thing. The price on all variegated monsteras, Thai and albo, is massively dropping. Oh my God. Even at the beginning of last year, you were usually looking to spend over £100 here in the UK if you wanted to get a Thai constellation, even just like a little plant. And I've seen them pop up a lot recently for under 50 quid. And I'm not just talking little ones, I'm talking like well-established plants, which, God, it's just crazy. It really is crazy how quickly the price can drop on something. And this is why I always say, like, unless you absolutely need to have that plant now, hold out a little while, because chances are, if it's easily propagatable, you're going to see that plant in 6 months to a year for half the price. I can think of so many plants that that's happened with. So yeah, like, although these plant trends are interesting to look at, maybe hold off a little bit, I don't know. Yeah, as I say, Thai constellations, we are going to be seeing more of them just because more and more people can get them. I don't currently have a Thai constellation in my collection, and the last time I did have a Thai, I didn't get on brilliantly with it. I'd be keen to give it another go, so maybe at some point this year. I'm in no desperate rush to go out and get one, but maybe at some point this year I will do that. And then terrarium plants. I think, as I say, like, I think terrarium plants in general are having a little bit of a spike in interest. I'm definitely seeing more content online kind of pushed my way. Maybe it's because I'm showing more of an interest. I don't quite know how the algorithm works. But I think creating kind of bioactive environments within our homes is something that is becoming much more talked about. And because there is just this wonderful world of plants that a lot of us don't have access to unless you are willing to create an environment that has like 100% humidity. I do think a lot of us like crazy plant people are going to start setting up more spaces like that. I know, as I say, I am certainly keen to do so. And then I've just put like some categories of plants like Hemiographis, like that's one that I'm seeing a lot more of recently. I don't believe that needs to be a terrarium plant, and in fact I think it's even a plant you can grow outside, but there are some beautiful species of Hemiographis. Leah, I spoke about that recently in my wish list video. Libicea as well, Bromeliad as well, and Bromeliad is a type of plant that I'm not massively keen on currently, but I do kind of admire from a distance. I know it's also one that fits very much into that easy plants category, and there are some beautiful terrarium bromeliads, so I do feel like perhaps they're going to get a little bit more attention this year. And then terrarium begonias, and begonias in general I do think are really having their moment, and I know there's several creators, myself included, in the plant community that have suddenly kind of discovered begonias and kind of gone, you know what, I don't hate them, and have been showing more of them. But yeah, there are some really cool begonias, and terrarium begonias, like there are some incredible ones, and there are some that I've very much got my eye on. And I see popping up all the time, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like these little beautiful little almost jewels that you can have in terrarium environments are something that if you're looking to create a beautiful high humidity space, like why wouldn't you want to grow something like that? Because some of them don't even look like begonias. Some of them have very weirdly distinctive characteristics that you wouldn't necessarily put with the genus. But yeah, there's beautiful patterns, beautiful colours, beautiful iridescence on some of them that I just think is going to become increasingly popular as the year goes on. And then, in fact, I'm going to swap these two so I can finish on that one. But the other thing I've put on this list is trailing Hoyas. And again, I think this touches on what I was saying about easy care plants. I think Hoyas on trellises obviously are, like, people aren't going to get bored of just growing Hoyas on trellises, but there are certain types of Hoya, like for example, the Wyettier, the Gracilis, the Burtonate Af, the Linearis, that don't need to be grown on trellises. Like, they don't tendril quite as much. They tend to just kind of topple out of their pot and trail down. And I think people are starting to lean much more towards the look of like a pop of greenery without necessarily having to put in all of the work. And I think this not only applies to like beginners, people that just want a little splash of greenery here or there, but also the more seasoned plant growers that want to be able to focus on their tropical plants, on their high need plants, but also don't want to have like an empty corner that isn't green. So yeah, I think like trailing Hoyas, trailing Dischidia as well. There's some beautiful Dischidia that are very low maintenance and very adaptable and do just look gorgeous as a hanging plant without you having to do much. So yeah, I really do think they are going to become very, very popular. Again, I've noticed, like myself, I've looked at certain spaces that I want to fill. Believe it or not, I have got spaces that I want to fill. And trailing Hoyas are some of the first things that I look to when I'm looking to fill that spot. So yeah, but then finally the thing that I've got on this list is just growing plants in different ways. And I think, again, I know I've already spoken in this video about like epipremnum, for example, and we typically see epipremnum like Cebu blue, golden pothos, stuff like that, grown in hanging baskets, either trailing down or like climbing a wall or something like that. But I think experimenting with different ways of growing, such as getting these plants onto moss poles and just watching how their form can change when they are given different things and grown in different conditions, I think that is something that is going to trend, just something that I think a lot of keen houseplant enthusiasts are gonna want to play around with more. Again, like I know I certainly do. The second I've got some more space, I want to get a section of my Mandula pothos onto a moss pole, and I want to grow one of those crazy big ones like Sydney Plant Guy has. I want to just bring out the best potential in that plant. And it's not that I don't want to continue growing it as a hanging plant, because I love it in that form as well, but I would just like to do a little bit more experimenting. And yeah, same goes for things like the Monstera dubia. I think a lot of people are moving away from growing that plant as a shingling plant on a plank and kind of getting that onto a moss pole and seeing how it can fenestrate and size up. And that's just exciting. That doesn't even come down to buying new plants. That is just about taking what you've already got in your own collection and playing about and finding new ways of growing. So again, I think that very much feeds into the underconsumption thing that I was talking about at the beginning of this video. I think, I think a lot of people are going to be finding new ways to grow things, and that's exciting to me. I find that really exciting. But yeah, as I say, I know I haven't gone as much into like specific species of plants in this video compared to how I have done when I've made this video in previous years, but I feel like there is more. I don't know, the way that I'm feeling about things this year is more, I can't think of a better word than unspecific, but I think it could go a lot of ways is what I'm saying. And yeah, as the year goes on, I think we will obviously get a better idea of things, but this is my starting point. And as I said at the beginning, I would be so interested to know your thoughts. I would love to know if you agree with me. I would love to know if you don't. So let me know down in the comments below what you think some plants are that are going to trend. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm so sorry if I waffled. I'm pretty sure I did. But if you did enjoy this video, please take a moment to just give it a thumbs up. It really helps me out. Subscribe to my channel if you fancy it. Have a lovely day, and I will see you in the next video.
Stay sexy, plant lovers.